And with me now is former Director of National Intelligence and retired Air Force Lieutenant General James Clapper. General Clapper, welcome to the program. So I want to ask you about the book, but I want to also start with the news of the day because you're right in the middle of it, as we just mentioned. President Trump said this morning, and this is regarding allegations that the FBI used an informant during the 2016 campaign. He said, "I hope it's not so, but if it is, there's never been anything like it in the history of our country." He went on to say, if you look at Clapper, he sort of admitted that they had spies in the campaign inadvertently. I hope it's not true, but it looks like it is.
Well, I think he's kind of distorted what I was trying to say, which was I actually took aversion to the term spy, which I don't like anyway, but particularly it's inappropriate in this context. Far big gulf between a spy in a traditional sense, employing spycraft or tradecraft, and an informant who was open about who he was and the questions he was asking. The intent, though, is the important thing. It was not to spy on the campaign, but rather to determine what the Russians were up to. Were they trying to penetrate the campaign, gain access, gain leverage, gain influence? And that was the concern that the FBI had. And I think they were just doing their job and trying to protect our political system.
The president, as you know, has been just constantly critical of the intelligence community since he's been in office. Today, among other things, he's saying elements of the Justice Department are part of the, quote, criminal deep state caught in a major spy scandal. Now, we know Secretary of State Pompeo somewhat contradicted the president today, said he doesn't think there's a deep state. But what is the effect of these cumulative comments by the president?
Well, right now, he is kind of off the intelligence community, I think. It's the focus for him has, of course, been the Department of Justice and the FBI. Right. And I absolutely am concerned about the morale, the impacts on those two organizations. And I'm also concerned from the standpoint of standards and norms of our country that have been followed for decades, whereby the independence of those two, of the Department of Justice and the FBI are respected and, in fact, enforced by presidents. And this one is very different. And so when he starts directing investigations and making these kind of allegations, it's for me, it's not good for the country. And I've said this some time ago that there's an assault on our institutions, both internally, from both internal and external sources. The external source is Russia. The internal source is our president, is attacking these institutions that have served this country long and well. And there's not a whole lot of these are actually fragile, and if they're not protected and nurtured over time, we risk losing them. And not all that much different between where we are today and being a banana republic.
You write in the book about your decades-long career working in intelligence. You cover the raid on Osama bin Laden, the Benghazi attacks in Libya, and then the 2016 election. And at one point, you note, James Clapper, the public history of U.S. intelligence tradition never discuss it publicly. I guess my question is the intelligence community destined to be undermined, misunderstood, not appreciated?
Well, it appears that we've had our ups and downs and we've had our failures. I think the important thing about that is that the intelligence community is a learning organization. So when we've made mistakes, we've tried to apply, learn from them, apply lessons learned so they don't repeat themselves. But intelligence is one of the things that makes it interesting. It's also very challenging in that you are attempting to reduce uncertainty with a less than full deck of information. And that's almost always the case with intelligence. Without it, I think the nation is less safe and secure. And one of the points or themes I try to make in the book, that my belief, not surprisingly, that intelligence is a noble calling, noble profession that's important, vital to the safety and security of this country and its people.
You asked some very tough questions about the nature of intelligence, whether the intelligence community has gone too far in some of its tactics and methods. What did you conclude?
Well, this is a function of current conditions. And it's also, it underlines the importance of enlightened oversight. It's one of the features that I lived through Church Pike in the aftermath of the Vietnam War. That was my war. And I was in the intelligence community then, and I was around when the two oversight committees were established. They have a special burden, in my mind, the members of those two committees, because they have to represent the rest of our citizens who by understandably can't know all the details of intelligence, particularly with respect to sensitive sources and methods. So the members on those committees have to represent our citizens to make sure that what the intelligence community is doing is legal, ethical, and moral. And we've had cases where, depending on the situation, post 9/11, for example, where intelligence community did things that after the fact people objected to, and that sort of thing happens, and it's one of the challenges of serving in the intelligence community.
One of the things you write or have spoken about, I should say, in addition to writing about it very candidly, is how you have concluded after what happened in 2016 that the Russians not only tried to affect the election, but you said they actually did affect the outcome. What did you mean?
Well, first, I need to make clear that when we did our formal intelligence community assessment in January of 2017, we did not make any call at all about whether the Russians affected the outcome of the election. We didn't have the authority, charter, or capability to do that. Since I left the government, though, as a private citizen, it's what I would call my informed opinion that given the massive effort the Russians made and the number of citizens that they touched and the variety and the multidimensional aspects of what they did to influence opinion and affect the election, and given the fact that it turned on less than 80,000 votes in 3 states, to me it just exceeds logic and credulity that they didn't affect the election, and it's my belief they actually turned it.
That is a stunning conclusion, isn't it? I mean, and what does that say about where we are as we head into these midterm elections and the next election?
Well, one of the motivations for my speaking out and writing this book was to do my small part in trying to educate the public on what the Russians are up to. They are bent on undermining our fundamental system here. And when a foreign nation, particularly an adversary nation, gets involved as much as they did in our political process, that's a real danger to this country. And I think educating the public is probably the toughest thing to do, and I felt I needed to do that because I think our institutions are under assail here, those which I spent about 50 years of my life trying to defend.
You are, when all is said and done, quite critical of President Trump. You write toward the end of the book, he set a new low bar for ethics and morality. He's caused damage to our societal and political fabric that will be difficult to repair, and you go on. Are you concerned, James Clapper, that by taking him on so directly that you may cause people to think, well, the intelligence community just has it in for Donald Trump anyway, therefore why should we have confidence in any investigation, in the special counsel investigation? Well,
that's a good question, and it's one I've thought about. I mean, the alternative that, and some people feel that I just should, dance off stage quietly into the night. And I thought a lot about that, and I thought about potential blowback on the active intelligence community, which I am no longer a part of. I'm now a private citizen, and I have my First Amendment rights like everyone else. But I decided that because I am so concerned about the health and strength of our institutions and our values that I spent a lot of time defending, that I had to speak out.
And you're comfortable with what you've written?
Yes.
James Clapper, the book is Facts and Fears, Hard Truths from a Life in Intelligence. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.